So a couple of questions. What do you do when you no longer want the character in the game, but they are still alive? So as a DM, talking with your players ahead of time, even if it's just a one shot, even if it is your first time doing a session zero, and you can look up specifics about session zero. I say a session zero is important, even for a one shot. You can just keep it a little bit more brief.
Mm-hmm.
And that should include, hey, are you okay with your character dying or not? And so if it looks like if you don't want a character in a game, that's a little bit of a different question. As a DM, I'd think about what is it about this character that is making me upset, that is annoying me, and try to figure that out, because it may be something that I'm doing. Do I not want this rogue in my game? Or do I really need to just reevaluate all of the stealth DCs that I have in my game because I'm annoyed that they're breaking all of them? Is the wizard? Do I really not like this wizard, or do I just need to rebalance my encounters because they're blowing everything up? So
Right.
that's a good way to think about it. And then if the player is doing something that is disruptive, that's when having a conversation with that player is really useful, especially if they're new players and you're a new DM. Having that moment and saying, "Hey, that's I feel like you're pulling me out of the game because you're trying to pickpocket everybody. Can you not? Can we just kind of get along here for a little while?"
And that's a hard conversation.
Yeah.
It's always a hard conversation to give any kind of notes on a game like that, and it's hard not to take it personally at first, but you have to realize, like, everyone's there to have fun together, and that's, if you are giving notes, make sure that's the reason you're giving them, is so everyone's having fun together. And obviously these are your friends, so be kind about it. But yeah, like if the entire adventure becomes nonstop pickpocketing, it does get a bit laborious or whatever. It can be a lot for the whole group.
Also, just because you're friends doesn't mean they need to be your D&D friends. If you put together a group and you're all going to play, and by the end of the game you're like, this person the way they want to play is not the way I want to play, that's fine. It is 100% okay for you to still be friends, but for them to go find the game they want to play. And it doesn't even have to be a disruptive thing. Maybe your friend really wants crunchy, combat-focused, kick in the door and kill the monsters, and everybody else at the table, including you, wants to play something with heavy role-playing and a mystery involved in town. Both of you are right. That just means that your friend needs to go find another D&D group, or you need to go find another, and that's okay. That's part of the process of playing D&D and finding a group, and that's why that can be a little difficult, is learning what you want out of a game, learning what your boundaries are as far as a game is, and being okay with saying no, and still being able to be friends. I have very close friends I don't play D&D with. I'm sure I've got friends of mine that I don't even know about who would not play a D&D game with me. And it's just because of how we like to play, and that's 100% fine.
Right.
We had another question about Candlekeep Mysteries can now be inserted. How good is it going to be for a new DM?
So I think it's going to be great.
Yeah.
So that's 17 adventures. They're all going to be much shorter than you would typically find in something. If you look at like the other adventures that have been released, whether it's Tales of the Yawning Portal or Ghosts of Saltmarsh, these are much longer. For the Candlekeep Mysteries, that's 17 to choose from. You can find one that suits you and your group very easily if you've got 17 choices. So that's a really great bonus right out of the gate. Consequently, they're going to be much shorter. So I think that's going to be fantastic. It's probably going to be one of the best overall books for new DMs when it comes to new adventures, in my opinion, because you have a wide breadth of talent behind that book, including the people who make D&D and people in the community. You're going to find something for everybody in that. And it's going to be short enough to run. May not be a one-shot, but it's going to be probably the most accessible, I would say, for new DMs.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to be an excellent book that for this exact thing, for I want to get into DMing. If you don't want to wait for that release, definitely, as I said, check out the Encounters of the Week.
Right.
check out Tales from the Awning Portal. Like you said, those are slightly longer adventures. There's kind of a nice collection of mid-size stuff that you can do in 4 to 6 sessions, depending on what happens. So Tales from the Awning Portal, take a look at the starter set and the essentials kit. Those are both excellent starter adventures for new DMs that come with everything you and your players need. Check out if you are a Critical Role fan, if you've been watching Critical Role and you're like, it's time for me to jump on into playing my own game, you can get for free. Wildmount has Frozen Sick, which is that adventure is available for free on D&D Beyond. It's it's like a Tales from the Awning Portal style 4 to 6 episode game. And then James Hake put out Darkstar, which is a little bit shorter, can probably be played in 1 to 2 sessions. So if you're really excited about playing in Wildmount and Critical Role's universe, you can go check those out. As you move from the one shots into, all right, we've gotten through our first game and this is awesome, we're going to keep going, I'm going to do something a little bit longer. Don't be worried about trying to prep the whole adventure. You probably prepped the entire one shot because it was probably an encounter or two, a little bit of role playing. It was something that you can kind of read over really quickly. You're going to take a look at something longer like Frozen Sick, like Tales from the Awning Portal, and it's going to seem a little bit more daunting. You do not have to prep the whole thing. Prep the first chapter, prep the first couple of pages, prep, kind of skim over a bunch of it so you have an idea of where the adventure is going, but you really only need to be concerned about what's right in front of your players. You, as a DM, will often feel like you're the animated person on the train, putting the railroad tracks down in front of the train as it's moving. That is both the joy and terror of being a DM and also the relief of, I don't need to know all the details right now of how this adventure ends. As long as I have an idea of what the overall arc is, I just need to be prepared for next week.
Absolutely.
Yeah. More questions from chat. Whether using a physical binder or an electronic, something electronic like OneNote or Word, how do you organize it? What do you include and what do you not? So this is an excellent prep question. Todd, what do you do to prep your games?
Because I do so much improv, I give myself bullet points so I can process things very easily. Another thing I do is I am terrible at naming things. Well, I'm not terrible, but they are always wacky. So I will make a list of names, just a massive list of names that I can draw from. I know Matt Mercer does the same thing. The other thing I do is, okay, here are plot points I'd like to hit during this one shot or this campaign. A list of locations, magical items that people will find. And I actually use sticky notes in Windows for a lot of that. Or I'll send myself an email if I'm using an iPad and I'm not anywhere near a computer. But sticky notes help me a lot because I will drown in information. And I don't know if there's an official term for this, but when I'm faced with a massive amount of text, it's very hard. I have to read it multiple times to absorb it. Even if I'm the one who wrote it, if I look at it, it takes me a while to search for information. For whatever reason, that's how my mind works. Now, if it's something visual, I can tell you everything about that monster and the indenting of a paragraph about that monster for no reason. But if I'm looking at like any kind of like text, I try to keep it very, very simple, just bullet points to like just kind of hitch things too. Because again, things are going to be chaos. So
yeah,
when I prepared for Wildmount, I knew I had to come correct because I ran a campaign in Wildmount and I had the maps. I bought all the maps from Critical Role. I read through the book over and over again. I watched every single episode. And I watched every recap by Danny Carr as well. And then I may have asked some people who worked on the show specifics, even down to like how many soldiers were here and there, that kind of stuff. Because if it's a universe that everyone loves, like Wildmount, or everyone loves this kind of campaign setting, you make it more real when you have very real details. It's okay to get it wrong. It's also really fun to get it right. Yeah. So bullet points help a lot. And also how to say Hooperduke.
Hooperduke. And if you say it wrong, that's okay. That's just in canon.
What did I say, by the way? What was it?
You said it right. There were several characters who
Oh,
continually said it
and then they
wrong.
threw me off. Finally, they
Yeah.
finally gave up. Yeah,
For Hupperduke.
yeah.
I 100% agree on bullet points. I just use Word. I actually take a lot of inspiration from Sly Flourish's The Lazy Dungeon Master, which helped me consolidate my note taking for my prep for a specific session down to half a page or less. If I'm running a one shot, if my notes on that one shot take up more than a page for the entire one shot, I've either made way too many details or I know I just have too much, and I am also making sure that I've got stuff in there that can be completely thrown away depending on what my players do. So for me, it's a lot of the same kind of thing. I want to know what are the basic through lines, what's the adventure. Especially with a one shot, it can be a little bit easier because often the plot is something you can say in a sentence. So thinking about that, what is that plot? We need to get to the top of this tower because the alarm is going off. And this is what's happening at the top of the tower. And that's it. That's all you need to know. This is what the tower looks like, and this is all the ways you can get to the top of the tower. Any important NPCs, any important locations, and then my note taking, and I think every DM's evolves as you DM. And so what you think you need to prep when you run a game for the first time will not be what you need to prep. I'm with you, Todd. I'm horrible at names. And so if I do not have that list of names that I've pulled from the back of Xanathar's, that I've pulled from wherever, if I don't have fantasy name generator up, the character's called Bob. So I make sure that I have the list of names. What I can do is come up with everything else about an NPC on the fly. I know now that I'm good at improvising. So give me a name, I can do the rest. I'm not good at locations. I'm not good at mapping out areas or towns. So I know if I am going to have a team that's in a town or a city or somewhere and where it's going to be important for me to have at least basic geography, I want to detail that stuff. But once you get inside one of the buildings, I can come up with an entire tavern off the top of my head. Except for the tavern name, I'm bad at that. So a lot of prepping is, here's what I think I'm going to need in the moment. Here's what and then leaving behind, here's the stuff that I know I can make up. And that might evolve. That might evolve after your first game. You might be the person who can come up with amazing names and wonderful NPCs, but can't think about a reason why, this tavern would be in this town whatsoever. Or, you are really good at coming up with the plot for why these goblins are in this dungeon, but not actually mapping out the dungeon. So yeah, I just use Word and I just write everything out. Do a search online. There are a ton of resources specifically for DMs for planning, and you might find one that is useful to you. But honestly, Word is the best thing.